CA has made a pretty good decision, I think, in introducing their different units for Warhammer. They're going to introduce those in a series of videos. And what I thought would be interesting was to, for those of you not familiar with Warhammer, I have played Warhammer extensively myself, and I think I could offer some insight into what the units are able to do in Warhammer, at least, stats and so on. Now, that's not to say that this is how the Creative Assembly is going to implement those units into their game, but I think it would be cool to see how the units perform in Warhammer, and then have a look at how the units are interpreted and how they work in the Total War Warhammer game. So let's have a go here, and just to begin with, to those of you who are not familiar with Warhammer, the stats of a given unit are within several categories in Total War, or in in Warhammer. It's movement, weapon skill, ballistic skill, strength, toughness, wounds, initiative, attacks, and leadership. The movement is the amount of distance a unit can move in a single turn on the battlefield. Weapon skill is the chance that a unit has to hit another unit on the battlefield, and these are always decided by dice rolls. Ballistic skill is the chance to hit before any modifiers are applied, the chance to hit at range. Strength is the chance an attack has to inflict a wound on, that is checked towards the toughness of an opponent. Then we have wounds, the amount of wounds that unit has. So most man-sized units, if they're not heroes or lords or stuff like that, they will have a single wound, while bigger units, monsters, will have several wounds. Initiative value decides who goes first in combat, and attacks is the amount of attacks that a unit can make. Leadership is how well trained a unit is and how likely it is to break. Again, that is decided, and there are several other instances where these values are used. But for the Demigryphs, they are being ridden by inner circle knights that have either trained these beasts from birth, or their final ordeal has been to tame a Demigryph. So the movement value of 8 means that the Demigryph is reasonably fast. It cannot, however, fly. It has a weapon skill of 4, which is the same as the weapon skill of the knight sitting on it, and that's a fairly decent value. It has a strength of 5, which is better than most man-level creatures. Not as good as some monsters, but somewhat decent. A strength of 5 means that it has a good chance of wounding units that have a lower toughness than their strength. The toughness of 4 is about the same as an orc, so sort of a medium-high toughness value there. It has 3 wounds, so it can get 3 wounds inflicted to it and survive, or until it dies. The initiative value of 4 is slightly better than a normal man model. It has 3 attacks, which means that it can inflict multiple wounds and kill multiple models in a single round of combat. And its leadership of 7 is a fairly good leadership value. Now, the Demigryph cannot fly. It is a type of unit called monstrous cavalry, and it causes fear. It also has armor piercing with its beak and claws. So if all of this was to translate into Total War Warhammer, we are looking at a unit that is fairly fast, not the fastest, but fairly fast. It cannot fly. It will have a high amount of damage done on the charge. How they solve this with the amount of attacks and so on, I'm not entirely sure yet. Having attack speed would be a good thing, I think, for Total War Warhammer, because attack speed would enable there to be a difference between units that have slower attacks but do more damage per attack, and units that have lesser damage per attack but they attack more often. So that could be a nice balance there. And its 3 wounds means that this should be a beast that isn't easy to bring down. Now, keep in mind that most values in the game are below 10. So that means that 3 3 wounds, definitely not the highest, but the same amount of wounds that 3 normal man-sized models usually have if they're not a lord or hero of some sort. The initiative of 4, again, how that's going to be solved, I don't know if they were even going to use initiative in Total War Warhammer. But the three attacks, if they implement attack speed, which I think would be a huge mistake not to do, that should mean that the Demigryph should be able to chip away at units fairly effectively with high strength. The strength of the Griffin is comparable to that of a man model wielding a weapon giving +2 strength, or an orc wielding a weapon giving +1 strength. So it's a fairly strong combination of stats there. And the special thing about the Demigryph is that it can be in, I don't know if they're going to do this in Total War Warhammer, but the Demigryph can be in a unit with several Demigryphs and several knights. So when you have, it's sort of a monstrous cavalry unit. Well, it is a monstrous cavalry unit. So what we could be looking at, units of Demigryphs charging at full speed towards the enemy and tearing it to shreds, which is something that I would really like to see. Strength and honor.